Hello folks, it's Ad here. This is the Commodore scenario, taking another stab at this one after I failed hitting the passenger transportation between Buffalo and New York last time. To begin with, I'm going to follow my usual starting strategy, and that is to rapidly branch out and hook up as many cities as I can. And I shall be using small stations to save money initially. Obviously 2 small stations will cost you 80,000, 1 medium station costs you 100,000, so obviously each time you follow that you're saving yourself 20,000, and that could be the difference between hooking up another city or having to wait for your money to build up. So first of all, start by hitting Albany from New York, and then I just continue on from there, branch out along the northern edge of the map, such as towards Syracuse and Buffalo, before turning my attention to the coastline, and then heading down towards Baltimore, onto Washington DC, and then even down as far as Norfolk. However, the principle is the same. The cities don't really matter as long as you can try and hit those beer to meat production lines. You're in a good position if you can do that, because that'll just make you a ton of money. Obviously, this early expansion is expensive, and while you're expanding, you may not necessarily be hitting all your early goals or working towards all your early targets. But I find that the early targets, by and large, are relatively straightforward to hit. They usually connect a couple of, like maybe connect 3 cities or 5 cities, so obviously this quick expansion will hit that. But even if they're not actually tied in towards the goals that this scenario sets you, the money that these lines can generate for you is a godsend, and will definitely help you out later on, so it is worth doing, even if it is by and large passing your initial targets by. So that's Syracuse now connected, so now it's time to head across to Buffalo. Now in this scenario, Buffalo is like the primary city almost. It's the one that we have to grow. I think the target is 70,000 population, so it's not major city growth. And we also have to transport the passengers from New York City to Buffalo without stopping. So the way I achieve that is get an early line direct from Buffalo to New York, passing through the mountains where I can, and getting those trains running on that line straight away. So that goal is slowly being worked towards, and then once the money starts to roll in, much quicker, and we have a stronger economy, and then we can really maximise that line and really pump out those passengers using various tricks. Now looking back, I remember I actually made a mistake on this one, because I had it in my head that the goal was to transport the passengers from Buffalo to New York. In fact, it's the other way around. You have to transport them from New York to Buffalo. Now, I still hit the target without any major problems, but I could have hit it that a little bit faster, which would have given us a quicker completion time. In the end, it doesn't make a difference. We still complete this scenario pretty quickly, and I'm able to hit that president rating, which is a much better result than what happened last time, when I didn't even manage to finish the scenario, because, as I said at the start, I messed up on the passenger transportation. I waited too long, and I just left myself with too much to do, and I just ran out of time. So that's now Buffalo connected to Pittsburgh. Now, if memory serves, Buffalo is a beer producing city, and Pittsburgh is a meat production centre, so they're going to help each other grow. Obviously, growing Buffalo, as I said, is one of the goals here, to hit that 70,000 mark. But as I said as well, hitting 70,000 isn't difficult, and by and large, cities will generally idle towards 70,000 if you get the right connections without any, direct interventions, so to speak. You don't have to think, okay, now I need to connect this resource and then this resource. By and large, they can just get there almost by themselves. It's not like you have to go to 200,000 or 100,000 plus, where you need to start thinking about, okay, I need to plan what resources I need to bring in to make sure it gets that rapid growth. 70,000, it's not too bad. Just having a quick look around the map now to plot the next move. I think at this point it is where I link up to Baltimore from New York. I think I can't actually remember. This is a post commentary, in case you haven't figured that out yet. I've decided to do more post commentaries because what it enables me to do is I can, cut out some, or at least speed through some of the more uninteresting sections of the play, such as just waiting for money to build up, managing train lines and trains themselves, what goods they carry, what goods they don't carry, that sort of thing. So at some point there will be cuts and edits in this playthrough, as I just trim out some of the excess, so to speak, that doesn't make for good viewing. I didn't include the startup screen, so I'll just run through that with you now while I'm planning out this line to New York. We're playing with very hard AI. After I completed what scenario was it? I completed, was it Cattle Drive? I think it was Cattle Drive where I switched it to very hard, and I realised that it didn't really I didn't notice much difference in their play styles and how aggressive they were. So I decided to do that again on this one. It gives you that score bonus at the end. There we just had the Dragon locomotive come up for auction, so I take that one because I always like to get towards standardized components in this tech tree as early as I can, and cutting out, and if I can get the Dragon without spending the research points, that saves me 200 research points. That saves me, at least 8 to 10 months worth of accumulation of points before I can get that standardized components, which does make a big difference. I believe the character I'm using is the Trickster for the cheaper locomotives and cheaper auction prices, but I could be wrong on that. I tend to use the Trickster more often than not. Yes, there's our icon. Look, we are the Trickster again. So at the minute I was just checking there the bonds, because obviously this line from Buffalo to New York is quite expensive. So by manipulating the bonds, paying back our initial bonds and then being able to take out higher value bonds, now that our company value has increased, we can get that line done a lot quicker with less waiting around. So that's the bonds sorted, so we can now pay for that line. Obviously I don't think we'll be able to pay for the return line straight away, but at least we have one line down. So if we can't pay for the return line, we have the option, if we wish, to at least run one train on the initial line to start making us a little bit of money while we save up for the return leg. As you see there, we can't afford it. It would cost 295,000. We have just over 110, so there will be a bit of wait. And as I said, you can put a single train down, which is what I do now. As we have to hit that passenger goal, we want to set it to passengers and mail only. It's not going to take many passengers initially because the cities aren't that populated. Obviously, as the cities grow, more passengers will be travelling on your lines. And there's the first clue of the mistake that I alluded to earlier. Instead of setting the train starting New York to Buffalo, I set it from Buffalo to New York. Doesn't make much difference. Obviously, it will still pick up passengers in New York, but it's wasted at least one journey. So it's at least one journey's worth of inefficiency, if that makes sense. Probably doesn't. Okay, so now we can put the second track down to New York from Buffalo. So now we can start pumping out several trains to run between these two cities. We will need some supply towers on this line. It is a fairly long route. I think we go with 2. Yes, it looks, yes. Well, we can't afford two of them at the moment, but yeah, 2 is the one we go for. So as always in these early stages of these scenarios, it is a lot of waiting around while your capital rebuilds after early expenditure. But it is worth doing it this way because you just, yeah, the money these lines do eventually start to generate, and it doesn't take too long for them to start becoming very profitable and lucrative, is a major help later on when you need to put many lines down, or if you need to buy out competitors or buy up some industry slots, whether they're the ones in the cities or the rural industries out and about. The extra money from this early expansion comes in great help there. So now we're just going to connect Buffalo to New York. As many cities as you can get early on, as I keep saying, it's worth doing. So regardless of what your initial scenario goals are, I do recommend that when you start out like this, where you just go city, 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 as quickly as you can to as many as you can. Get at least 4 trains running between the two cities, perhaps more if it's a long run, and just let them start earning your money. Because the more trains you have running, you know, if you've only got a couple of trains running, you're waiting around for them trains to actually start hitting your stations so they can offload all their freight and make your money. If you've got multiple trains running all over the place, you're pretty much guaranteed that at any point in time you have at least one train in a station making you some money, so you're not waiting around as much and your money builds up much quicker. Now, one thing I did with the Cattle Drive playthrough, and I think I do it again here, although I don't remember, we'll see as obviously we progress, is I don't think I put many, if any, maintenance buildings down, and I just took the hit on the random breakdowns and the breakdowns due to poor maintenance that occur, because I've not tested this in terms, analyze the numbers or anything, but I have a feeling that sometimes the wait around inside of a station while trains are being repaired can be quite harmful, especially when you're starting to get many trains hitting that station, and then you start getting backlogs down your main lines because they're all waiting to go in while the others are being serviced. Obviously you can work around this by opening up other platforms and putting switches to different platforms and setting each train to go to different platforms and so forth, but that's a lot of micromanagement and that can cause its own problems, which you have to overcome and deal with. So this is something I'm trying in my play style, and that is avoiding maintenance buildings. I mean, you could always put the maintenance buildings in the rural stations, the ones out at the local industries, rather than in the cities. So then when they're waiting to be loaded up, or they're waiting for the supply demand to catch up, or to, the cities to demand the goods, instead of sitting idle at the station, they can be repaired there while they're waiting, and then they don't put anything inside your cities. That way, once they hit the city, straight in and out, straight in, unload, straight out, off they go. That platform is now free for the next train to come in and do the same thing. As I said, I've not tested that and ran the numbers or anything, but it's just something I'm trying out, and it seemed to work okay with the Cattle Drive. Yeah, you have those breakdowns, and yes, they are annoying, but we still managed to get a very good rating on the Cattle Drive. We finished it very quickly. We also finished this one quite quickly as well. I think this one's within 5 years. We actually hit all our targets, including the optional ones, so I believe. So it doesn't hold you back too much anyway. Right, now we have this connection bonus for Washington DC. Because Baltimore is so close, it makes sense just to go ahead and connect that. And then we can at least get a train running between Washington and Baltimore, which will start making us a little bit of money. Obviously, that's never a bad thing. As much, you know, more money you're building up, the better you are, the better position you're going to be in. So now we can get that station in Washington. That'll get us that connection bonus. Bit of extra bonus income is never a bad thing. There you go, 113,000. Because it's a short hop between the two cities, I decided just to go with a single line with a single train between the two. So now we're expanding our operations in the city of Pittsburgh, and also we're going to put a station there in Toledo. Obviously Beatrix has her presence in Toledo, so we've gone ahead and carved out our own little claim as well. And as I said, despite these competitors being on very hard difficulty, they don't grow and expand much at all actually. They tend, in fact, obviously I'm sure they do put a bit of extra track and maybe a few rural stations down, but I expected them to spread out quite aggressively, as you see happen with the Trickster in the Gone with the Headwind scenario, where as you get in towards the late game, she really does spider out across almost the entire map. With very hard AI, I expected them to be doing this, you know, all the while, and it doesn't happen. So we go ahead and put a bid down for creative accounting. We don't own any industries ourselves yet, but it does unlock the tech tree. That is the first tech on that page that you need to get before you can go anywhere, so it's worth getting. One of the best things I found I did is mute, or you know, reduce the volume on the competitor voice pop-ups because they just triggered me so hard for some reason, and I don't know why. I kept the speech bubbles there, so you know, if they're doing something I need to know about, such as stealing employees, then at least I'm aware of it, provided I don't miss the pop-up when it occurs, obviously. So now that we have a presence in Washington, I go down and build a station in Norfolk, and I can connect these two together and start running trains between the two, which is, as I keep on saying, keep repeating it, makes us money. The more money you get in, obviously that's the aim of the game here. You need to have money before you can do anything. Now, I don't believe that I expand any further south than Norfolk. I don't remember doing it anyway. I think Norfolk is as far as we venture into the southern half of this map. So we're just building that second track between the two cities, because we do want multiple trains running this route. If you might have just spotted it there when I opened the task list, we've almost hit the 800,000 quarterly profit margin target. I think the actual figure is around about 769,000. So we need to increase our quarterly profits by, say, $30,000 to $40,000 in the next quarter, and then that's that task squared away. So a few problems here trying to lay this track in. We get it sorted. It does have to part away from the initial track a little bit, so we don't save money on the parallel track bonus for the bridge, but that's fine. So you see I copied that train twice, so that's 3 trains going one way, so then we want 3 trains going the other way, making a total of 6, and that's purely because it's a longer distance run than normal, so putting more on is never a bad thing. Now I'm just connecting up this meat industry, and that's going to supply, sorry, the cattle industry, I do beg your pardon, and that is going to supply the meat and leather factory that we have in Buffalo. Obviously that's going to have the added bonus of helping Buffalo grow, and it's also going to help us because we're going to make some profits off it. So basically it's a win-win situation here, and it's a relatively short distance to connect it up. Now unfortunately I don't think I was able to hit that supply tower, so we'll have to put our own supply tower down for this line, but that's not a problem. I do try and hit the existing supply towers where possible, because it does save you 30,000, which in the early game, you know, it does make a difference. It's that little bit less time that you're spending waiting around to get things done. Our economy is now starting to take shape. We're getting good income rolling in, and it's coming in at a fairly decent pace as well. So, so far so good there.
Significant quarterly results, and you can be satisfied with that.
So there we've hit the 800,000 quarterly profit target for this scenario. So that's objective 2 now taken care of. The other objectives, I believe, you have an express line. I think this is an optional one, but an express line between the cities of Toledo and New York. You have an objective to buy out one of your competitors, and then I believe there is an optional objective to buy out all of your competitors. On this playthrough, I'm struggling to remember, I do believe I do achieve all objectives, including obviously all the main ones, but I also think I get both of the optional objectives as well, and I still managed to complete it in a good time. Like I said, I think it's about 4.5 years, maybe 4 years, 4 months, perhaps something like that, with a score of president. So all in all, I was very pleased with this playthrough. And I don't think there's much. Well, there's a few things I could have done better. For example, figuring out even earlier that it's actually New York to Buffalo for the passengers rather than Buffalo to New York. But in terms of, you know, increasing the score, there's, apart from maybe running it in Trainiac mode where the game doesn't pause while you're doing track lane or building construction, I don't think there's much more I could have done. So at the minute I'm just hooking up all these local industries to keep Buffalo supplied. Obviously the more demand satisfaction you can hit, the more sustained and rapid growth you're going to see in the city. See, at this point I was still labouring under the impression that our target is to transport the passengers from Buffalo to New York. So my thinking here was not only am I hitting, you know, working towards that goal of growing Buffalo to a population of 70,000, I'm also helping hit that 1,000 transportation of passengers goal, because the more people we have in Buffalo, the more people we're going to have being transported to New York. Obviously, I didn't realise yet that the goal is actually transport them from New York. So what I should also have been doing is helping New York grow at this point. You know, focus on both cities simultaneously, get New York and Buffalo expanding quickly. Like I said, this is one of the few mistakes I think I made in this one, and if I were to play it through again at some point, obviously I would be more aware of that little mistake that I made, and I would make the effort to grow New York as well as Buffalo as quickly as I can, just to shave some time off the run through. I'm just bringing some a cotton line in now from the Taylor farm just outside of Syracuse and running that into Buffalo, because Buffalo now has a weaving industry inside, so it's going to have a demand for cotton, so we want to keep that demand satisfied to encourage and promote growth in the city, as well as, you know, turning us a tasty profit from shipping the cotton into the city. So we do the usual setup with any local industry, and we set up the cars to be fully loaded before the train leaves the station. Just seen another one of the targets there was to have a total track length of, I think it was 7,793 miles. Another way to achieve that one, or a handy way to achieve that one, is to actually, when you're buying out your competitors, don't sell off their tracks and stations. You don't have to use them. You don't have to run anything on them. As long as you own the track, which obviously you will do once you buy them out, it is going to add towards that target. Now, as I said, they don't expand much at all in this scenario, which is strange, since they're set to very hard, so they have cheaper build costs and they're meant to be more aggressive. So, you know, buying their track, well, it does help. It doesn't help massively, because they're not putting down, you know, hundreds and thousands of miles of track. In fact, in the end, I do believe it is the that express line that I build from New York to Toledo that puts us over the line for that 7,000 mile objective. So now I'm just connecting the cities of Toledo to Indianapolis. And this is all about just finding as many ways as possible to make some money. Obviously, the more cities you have, the more trains you have, the more freight you're shipping, the more passengers you're shipping, therefore the more money you're making. Plus, obviously, it's helping build towards that track length target. You're not going to hit that target at all if you're not putting down stretches of track, so it's worth doing. It's also worth remembering as well that if a city-to-city connection, let's say the distance is 500 miles between the two cities, if you're double tracking like I tend to do, then you can just about double that. It's not exactly double, so instead of just being a 500 mile stretch of track, you might be looking at a 950 mile stretch of track. So it's also worth double tracking from that point of view, especially if one of your goals is to have a fairly high amount of track. And now I connect Grand Rapids to Indianapolis, because that's a beer meat line, so that's going to make us some decent profit. And as I just said, it also chips away at the track length goal that we have to hit. That line's now operational and up and running. Okay, so it looks like I do expand further south. We'll see Wilmington as well. And I think this is for the 12 cities connected objective. At the minute we're on 11. At least I think it's cities. It might be rural industries, I can't remember. I didn't have a chance to read it quickly enough when old me opened the task menu there. But I think it is cities. And I think this is the one that ticks that objective off for us. Yes, it was. It was 12 cities, so that's now 12 cities connected. And again, we can make a bit of money off this line. It'll run away in the background there, ticking over quite nicely, adding towards, you know, pumping money into our account, which is always good. See, those are some of the technologies that I should have unlocked a little sooner, especially the ones that are increasing passenger wait time or passenger numbers in your stations. But not to worry, it doesn't negatively impact us at all. Okay, so pressing on nicely now, things looking good, and now I was looking to buying up some industries, because one of our targets is to have a company goal of company value of 40 million, and the more industries you own, the higher your company value is. So we just go ahead and play with the bond market to issue new bonds, high value bonds, and this is the point where the only real time that I see very hard AI come into play, because I get into a bit of a bidding war here, and both Don Lorenzo and Doc Murphy both start bidding on this, and it drives the price up from just over 500,000 to just above $1 million in the end. I end up paying for it, and they like to dick me about here by putting bids in at the very last second, which is frustrating, but never mind. At least the timer resets when somebody bids, so you're not sat there thinking, oh shit, I've just missed out because I wasn't quick enough clicking to rebid. So we have a look at the weaving industry, which has cost us just shy of $1 million. So we upgrade our meat industry. Obviously we're supplying the cattle on our trains, so we're making money on the cattle run, and now we're also making money on the meat that's being produced. And then we're also making money on the meat that we're shipping to cities, you know, around on our network. So now it's going to start shipping corn into the city of Buffalo to help push the demand satisfaction up as much as we can. And we just let it share the track that the wheat shipments are using. Get the train set up from the corn farm and get them running into Buffalo. And then we can start bringing this fruit in from the other side of the mountain range there and get this flowing into the city. And again, we'll just hook it up to that trunk line that we've placed down from the corn farm itself. None of these resources that are going to be shipped on these lines are industry critical resources, so I'm quite happy for them to share lines, because the city stocks won't be used up as quickly as they would be if they were also feeding an industry. Obviously, if you say, for example, you had a beer industry in the city, then not only would your population be consuming the wheat that you're shipping in, but your industry would as well. Especially when that industry starts to expand, or you start shipping that beer to multiple different destinations. That's when you really want the resources to have their own dedicated lines where nothing else is going to get in their way and interfere. As it stands, as I said, none of these resources are going to an industry, so they could just all share up onto one line. So now we'll go ahead and put some more trains on the Buffalo to New York line, so we can start hitting more passengers, or transporting more passengers. Obviously we're not hitting them, we want them to travel on our railway. Just going to go through here now and make sure that they're all set to passengers and mail only. While you can make money off the, that is a beer meat city line, so you would make decent money off your freight. To me, it's more important that we get the passengers going. So that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm changing them to passengers and mail only. Obviously, once you've hit that 1,000 passengers transported goal, if you so wish, you can then go back through and set them to automatic, so they can start shipping the beer and the meat and the other such resources that may be available between the two cities. So Buffalo's in growth, which is good. So all those raw materials we are providing are having an effect. So up to 57,000. We need to get to 70,000, so making good progress there. And I've still not realised that the passenger transportation goal isn't Buffalo to New York, it's New York to Buffalo. I'm still operating in ignorance. So right now what I'm doing is, again, repaying bonds to open up higher value bonds to increase our money. And then I think it's around about here that I start buying up some of my competition to hit those goals, buying them out and buying them all out. See, I did the right thing there by putting an attraction in Buffalo, because if you have an attraction, it increases the number of passengers that travel to the city. But I also put one in New York. Now what I should have done is put a museum in New York, so then New York is growing that little bit quicker, so there's more people willing to travel from New York, or more people available to travel from New York to Buffalo. So an outright merger with Don Lorenzo would cost us 5 million, which is pretty good. So in fact, that's very good. Sometimes you could be paying 30, 40 plus million for a merger. And again, this just highlights how little, how little these guys actually bother to expand in this scenario for whatever reason. Maybe I just got very lucky, I'm not sure. But trust me, they are set to very hard. Obviously, that'll show itself in the score overview at the end, because it does give you it gives you the breakdown as to how his score's calculated, and you see the score modifier for having the AI set to very hard. Just so you know, I'm not pulling your pisser. So I'll go ahead there and take the professor, which will reset my research points, but does provide a cash injection, which I then use to invest in the Don's business, so we could take him out of the game. Now a merger costs just over 1 million, which is very, very good. So our passenger goal is now halfway done. We're at 516, and we have until the end of 1853 to transport another 500. again, just take another chunk of shares off him. So now we're up to 80% ownership. Now it's time to connect this dairy farm to Buffalo to supply it with milk to further aid in city growth and expansion. And we just let it hug our passenger line in. And I just connect it onto the line that runs to Pittsburgh, I believe. So now we have milk en route to Buffalo. There you go. See, an attraction increases the number of people travelling to the city by 20%. See, now I realise, shit, that I've been good about this backwards. And what I should have been doing is expanding New York as well to get more passenger volume. So at this point, I correct my error eventually, after, 2 years of gameplay, and start feeding New York with the materials it needs to grow. Now, as it says, it doesn't make much difference, apart from perhaps, it took us longer to complete than it should have done. But in terms of our overall score, this hasn't affected us too badly at all. We still get that present rating at the end of this. So, in the end, it was a mistake, but it wasn't a costly mistake. But I do remember I was quite panicked at this point, thinking, "Ah, for God's sake, if I balls this up once again," hoping that I'd, have the time to pull back from an error. Like I said, luckily I did. So that's wheat being supplied now. We get these logs brought into New York as well. Just going for all the base resources that a city needs for growth. And the things you want to be targeting initially are wheat, corn, beer and or meat, depending on what's in the city, and logs. After that, you want to start thinking about things like fruit, vegetables, milk, and at this point, you should have other industries inside your cities. So whatever those industries are demanding. So it could be cotton if you've got a textile manufactory. It could be extra logs if you've got a furniture manufactory. Oil if it's refinery, whatever. Obviously that supply tower removed my directional signals, so I had to set different signals to be my one-way stops. So that's all taken care of now. For some reason I was toying with the idea of putting a ventilator on this line, which would have been a very bad idea, because of the gradient on the return back to the fruit farm. luckily I saw wisdom and put the dragon on there instead. And at this point I get rid of that attraction, which I didn't need, and replace it with a museum, so I've corrected that mistake there. So that's going to help lower the threshold for demand satisfaction in terms of growth. So now we get these vegetables brought in from Lopez Farm, and again we just hook this up to one of our existing lines because it's not a resource that is demanded by our industry, so we don't need to have dedicated lines for it really. Just getting everything set up there. So we'll need another supply tower since the vegetables wouldn't hit the one that we have in place. So that's the buffalo growth task completed. Buffalo's now at 70,000. So that's one of the major objectives addressed and out of the way. Now it's time to start bringing some milk in to New York City. So we'll just expand our existing station, hook the milk into our existing network, and then just run a couple of trains there, and that's the milk taken care of. Now I forgot to put my switch in there, which is why when I tried to set up the train line I wasn't able to select New York from Nolan Breeding. Obviously now I can, now that I've put the switch in. So now we're with over 3/4 of the way towards our passenger target. We're at 781. We can also almost outright merge with Don Lorenzo. I think it was 933,000 for an outright merger at this point. There we go. That's him out of the picture. We keep his tracks and stations in because they'll add towards our total track length, which is obviously one of the targets we have to get as well. Now it's just a case of getting the money together to buy up large chunks of the remaining competition. Starting with Doc Murphy, we can take out 50% of his shares, although for some reason I didn't. Maybe I didn't notice it when I was actually playing, but I noticed watching the footage back that as I clicked out of the stock menu, the option to buy the 50% actually came through. I didn't take it. So I'm an idiot. So at this point, just thinking back to what the remaining goals are, I have the infrastructure in place now to basically let my train system almost idle away in the background while I focus on buying out my competition. As you can see, we're making money almost hand over fist here. Now these get into a bidding war for a brewery based in Jacksonville, which nobody's connected to, and they're literally spending well, 1.684 million. There is the latest bid from Doc Murphy, and nobody has a station in that city. And I remember thinking, what the chuff are they doing here? Why did they do that? I mean, yes, it increased their company value, which, you know, made me spend a bit more money to buy them out, but I was making that much money at this point. It really didn't matter. All it did is mean I might have been waiting 15 seconds to buy them out rather than 10 seconds to get the money to buy them out. So New York has overtaken Buffalo as the largest city. That's thanks to the museum that we eventually placed down in New York City to help it grow. Just harking back to something I said, I did say the only thing left is to buy out our competitors. Obviously that's not entirely accurate, I also have to get that express line from Toledo to New York built. And I think that's what I'm doing here now. I'm expanding the station to give me the platform space to get this express line put down. And it's an expensive line, but we're at that stage now where tunnels and excess amount of bridges aren't a major concern, because we've got such a strong economy that we can either pay for it straight away, or it doesn't take us long at all to gather the money together to be able to pay for it. So I'm just plotting here which way I want my route to take. Now, rather than be frugal and work around the mountains, I do opt for tunnels and blasting my way straight through the mountains. Now that'll help. Obviously you have to set speed records. I think you have to set a speed record and then break your own speed record in order for your line to be classed as an express line. So by letting the game just, run through in terms of track markers, we're not putting too many down, we can keep the average gradient of that track relatively flat. Obviously the flatter your track, the less inclines you've got, the faster your trains could run. So just eating up another chunk of Doc Murphy's company now.
You have successfully established a major passenger line.
So there we go, that's that 1,000 passengers goal hit, and we hit it just at the start of 1853 with, well, let's say 11 months to spare, which is pretty good. Could have done it much faster had I realised what the objective actually was a lot sooner. But never mind, it's out of the way now, and we can press on with our remaining tasks. There we go, so to buy his company at this point, it costs us just over $135,000. So now we can take Doc out of the picture. Again, we'll keep his tracks because they push us up even closer to that that target of 7,700 miles of track. And this express line from Toledo is actually the one that nudges us over that threshold. So I have some issues somewhere along the line. So at this bridge it's just clipping with that supply tower below it, so we just have to do a slight bit of adjustment here. But we get there in the end, and it doesn't tack too much onto our price either, so that's our soon-to-be express line now completed, so we can put the signals down. Obviously we already hit a couple of supply towers on the way, so saving a bit of money there, but at this stage saving money to get a supply tower's no great shakes at all. Probably waiting a couple of seconds at most to get the 30 grand together. So now we can go ahead and set the trains running between the two cities, and we'll use our fastest train, which is the Rogers American. And this is one of the few times I actually will put staff on my trains, and I get the ones that increase the train speed. There we go. Now, one suggestion I would have for the game developers is when you are managing your train personnel, it's not immediately obvious at a glance as to whether a potential staffer for your train is one that you can employ, somebody that you've already employed but is sitting idle, or is somebody that you've already employed and is already set up on one of your existing trains. Now, it does say no task, or it'll give you the route that they're operating on if they are on a train, but it's not something that stands out. Now, what I would suggest is the employees that you have already assigned to a train should perhaps be a darker colour, like slightly greyed out. You can still select them if you want to, but it should be visible at a glance that you know, okay, I have this staff member available, but he is doing something already. So, because I've done it a few times where I've not been paying much attention, I've just been, you know, blasting through it as quick as I can, and I've ended up, you know, assigning the same engineer to about 4 different trains in the end. Obviously, he's not working on all 4 trains; he's only working on the latest one, but it was a bit annoying. So, if they could do that, that'd be great. So there's the express line objective met. Now all that remains to do is grow to $40 million company value and purchase Beatrix's company. So there's Beatrix, nestled in right in the northwest corner of the map. I think the video may have cut out a bit there. I think it may have missed a bit where I bought the 40% shares from her. But I apologise for that. I don't know what happened actually. At this stage, it really is just a case now of building company value and increasing our cash on hand to allow us to buy Beatrix. So there isn't much in terms of new gameplay to see here. I think perhaps I go through and pick up some extra industries, or lay some extra trains down, or expand my existing businesses to create extra profit. But I don't think there's anything fancy at this stage that I do aside from what you'd normally do. Which I think is a testament to the strategy that I've started to use, where this early rapid expansion, this early growth, this claiming of cities and laying down track as quickly as you can, it really starts to come into its own as you hit the mid to late game, because you can just almost leave your empire on automatic, you know, autopilot in the background, while you just go ahead and just let your money build up. So we can increase our stake to 90% of her company, and that means we just have 867,000 for an outright merger at this point at current price. Obviously that does fluctuate. So at this point, guys, this video length is now just peaked past 1 hour in length. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to accelerate the remaining footage and then bring it back into normal speed, so to speak. Once we hit that 40 million, there's little less to do now. Beatrix has gone, all competitors are gone. The only thing left to do is to increase our company value. And as you see in there, that's just a case of buying up industries, expanding them to increase their profit margins, to increase our company value. So yeah, I'll go ahead and cut it here. I'll run this remaining part through at 4 times regular speed, and as I said, I'll slow it down just before we hit the final objective. Okay guys, just bringing it back in now, we're getting close to the to completion. What I did in that accelerated period is use our networks that we inherited in the south of the map, bought up load industries in that area, connected them all up, got the trains running, expanded any existing industries that we had, the usual steps you would take if you wanted to increase your company value. So this is almost over. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have been struggling with this one, I hope you've been able to learn something, or pick up something that you want to try out in your own playthrough next time through. All that remains for me to say, guys, is thanks for watching. I enjoyed this one. It was cathartic after struggling the first time through to smash it out of the park. We got a president rating and we managed to finish it in, I think it was 4 years and 8 months total playtime.
It's remarkable.
There we go, picked over 40 million. And all that remains for me to say, guys, is I shall see you in the next episode. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.